Great day, everyone. Great day. And thank you for joining us today for Clinical Conversations. These are real practice based conversations based on trial and error. My name is Dr. Melva Covington. I'm the Managing Director and Senior Principal Officer of Agape Strategic Solutions of Maryland. I also have the honor of serving as the Managing Director and co-founder with Ms. Tamara Allen of People Empowering People for Inclusion Now. PEPIN. There's an exclamation point in the middle of our name, and that means that we move with urgency. Our core competencies are in research and engagement that's really scaled using digital technologies. I'm an outcomes research scientist, I'm a strategic thinker, and I'm a patient advocate. I am delighted to be here today and to also partner with two incredible giants in the field, Dr. Cheryl Bill Anderson and Ms. Martha Dockery. So let's get started. This is a kickoff to a series that's designed to address pertinent issues in clinical research planning and operations. It's entitled Trial and Error. Our focus is strategic as well as executional as it pertains to clinical trials. We look beyond what's on paper. We intend to peel back the veil, pin back the layers in examining multiple aspects in the healthcare ecosystem, including the lived experiences of people who participate in research and in care interventions. The trial and error platform creates a space for open, honest, practice-based dialogue about how early intervention in clinical trials, clinical research in the ecosystem can really work. So our focus is on where the process breaks down and where it can be improved. It is inclusive. It's not inclusive of everything, but it is exploratory and collaborative based on our expertise and experiences. So, for example, what can the industry do differently to better design studies up front that work effectively, let's say in harder to reach communities, geographies? Or how can we work to address stakeholders who want to engage in trusted environments? That's the trust gap. So each episode will bring together leaders from across the industry, regulatory, strategy, quality, clinical operations, real world evidence, health outcomes, stakeholder engagement, digital health, health equity, policy, and so much, much more. We'll discuss an array of therapeutic areas and unique perspectives, oncology, neuroscience, endocrinology, and rare diseases. We'll examine targeted domains like small molecules, biologics, cell and gene therapy, diagnostic and digital devices, and other innovative technologies. In sum, we plan to explore across disciplines and where they intersect clinical protocol design and regulatory strategies, building metrics for study operations and research site management, participatory action engagement and how it impacts retention and research dissemination, evidence translation, and its applicability to change management in the real world. Our goal is simply this: to understand the challenges at the crossroads, the trials, and then execute in an integrated, measurable way to fix the problem or error. Okay, now we're eager to begin this conversation, so we ask that you please post your questions in the chat. We'll try to answer them live or follow up right after the show. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Enjoy the conversation. I turn it over to my colleague and friend, Dr. Bill Anderson. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Melva. It is truly a pleasure and an honor to be on this first episode of Trial and Error. As has been said, I am Cheryl Bill Anderson. I am the founder of ACE Regulatory Affairs Consulting. And ACE provides fractional chief regulatory affairs officers services to clients and companies in the biopharma space that are looking to solve complex decisions. ACE has leveraged 25 years of experiences that have come through the biopharma space, as well as the network that comes with that. This experience is working directly with drug development teams, the FDA, with a global perspective, of course, as well as executive leadership and SVP level head of function for quality, regulatory affairs, as well as drug safety. So, with these experiences, though, one thing that is unequivocally clear is that in clinical trial space, is that it is a series of calculated trials as well as inevitable errors. So with that, the alignment, where is it that it's important to get alignment? Clinical trials involve many, many moving parts, regulatory expectations, operational issues at the site level, and the experiences of the participants themselves, right? So as a result, then it really does rely on these elements coming together in the trial design. And studies have a stronger chance of success when this alignment actually happens. Trial and error. This will address the trials, what succeeds, as well as where they face challenges through candid discussions, as has already been outlined. It is now my pleasure to bring to the stage Martha Dockery, known for her clinical boots and community roots approach to clinical trial management. Let's hear from her now.
Thank you, Dr. Bill Anderson. Hi, everyone. I am Martha Dockery. I am the founder and CEO of Superior Clinical Research. We are a community based research site network in the North Carolina area. My perspective in clinical research really comes from having spent over 20 years working across many parts of the research ecosystem. I've had the opportunity to work in operations, site management, monitoring, strategy, and community engagement. So I've seen clinical research from every different angle. That experience has shaped how I approach this work today, and with a strong focus on both operational excellence and that human connection. So my primary focus is around community-centered research and improving access to clinical trials. That's my love language. I'll say it again. Many of the people who we serve are historically haven't always seen themselves reflected in research. So part of my work has been helping bridge that gap. So that means building trust, educating communities, and making sure that they understand what respect look like and is in medical research, and also making sure that participation feels accessible, respectful, and transparent. So here at Superior, we spend a lot of time talking about how to make research feel less intimidating and more approachable. This includes using plain language, partnering with local community organizations, and meeting people right where they are. And that means literally in barbershops, churches, even at community events. For me, if the goal is not just enrolling participants in a study, but helping people understand that clinical research is an opportunity to contribute to science, healthcare opportunity, and improving health in their own communities. So the lens that I bring to this conversation is really about how do we connect strong clinical operations with real community engagement? Because both of these are essential if we really want to truly represent the people it's meant to serve. So I'm super excited to sit here on this panel. So thank you, Dr. Bill Anderson, and I will turn it back over to you.
Thanks again, Martha. That's great, and so important to understand the operational component of what brings patients actually into a clinical trial. And looking forward to what you'll be bringing to that. But one of the first questions that we really want to address is, where does it all begin? And we each have a point of view. And so, with that point of view, I'll start with the fact that a trial, in essence, creates value, and the errors create challenges and are often costly. So regulatory affairs enters before the first dose, working with the team to form the regulatory strategy and the interactions as well as the submissions that are being planned. So next, the regulatory health authority engagement must happen at the right time. And for ease, let's just say it's in the US, the FDA. Now, when new product development teams engage with FDA, I have found that a respectful colleague approach is one that works best. Rather than seeing the agency as an obstructionist, you're likely to have more success if you enter the program, if you enter the conversation with a understanding of mutual listening and mutual learning. Now, how a sponsor actually engages FDA that actually builds or weakens your brand as a company. Now, on the error side of that, errors can lower the probability of regulatory success. Sponsors that do not engage regulatory health authorities early and or at the right time, these are times that it's less likely that the success will come. and you're going to be headed down a path. It is a hit on time. It is costly protocol amendments. It's adverse reactions and actions that have to be reported by the agency, as well as sometimes the decision of the agencies, ranging from clinical hold all the way up to and through a complete response letter at the end of a review of your application for marketing approval. That's the places that we don't want to be. And so at the end of the day, we have an opportunity from inception until the actual submission to do it right and get it right and reduce the risks that come with that. So Martha, I'd like to hear your perspective now, more specifically from your lane as far as what that point of view is. Where does it begin?
Okay, so you said it exactly, collaboration, right? I believe that starting in the community, grounding the problem, and the people who carry the burden, that's the foundation. But here's my question. What happens when that knowledge that moves from the community into the protocol? Because too often, by the time the trial designs lands in front of us, the site, that community intelligence has been filtered out, smoothed over, and traded away for operational convenience. So yes, pharma companies are getting better at bringing insights earlier. I'll give them that. However, but are the right people at the table? Are the right seats on the bus? Meaning nothing at the table is missing the communities most affected by the disease. So we can have certain people at the table, but we want to say, are the right people at the table? And I think that's what's important. So for me, Cheryl, Dr. Bill Anderson, our clinical trials belong before the first participant is even enrolled. It begins at the design table. Every additional visit requirement, that's a working parent who can't say yes. Every eligibility criteria added without asking the participant or that community sake, that's a recruitment timeline that's already slipping. Every procedure that makes sense in planning a meeting, that's a retention problem when managing that. We're managing 6 months from now. So I think the error would be is when the right sites are engaged in design and not consulted at the end. So that collaboration, right? You talked about the FDA being that partner. The sites need to be that partner as well and not handed the final protocol because we bring that intelligence. And no CRO dashboard can replicate that, what we're bringing to the table. We know what the people in our communities will and won't do. We know what visits will break working families. We understand that language in the consent, loses people. And we know what will make people say yes. And so that's not operational feedback, that's scientific intelligence.
Wow. Uh, I have just a follow-up question with you on that one. Can you actually address, is this a new approach or is this an approach that is still evolving and now being refined?
I think this is that's a good question. I think it's a new approach and still evolving because I think at the beginning, you're bringing people in, advocacy groups, community groups, but by the time it gets down to the site, it's all washed out. So the things that the advocacy groups had said, hey, we need to do this, is now a operation like, oh, well, this won't work because when the community, these advocacy groups said, this is what will work in our group.
Thanks. Melba, bring your point of view to the table.
I would be happy to. I could not agree with my friend Martha enough in that how you design a research project at its conceptualization is absolutely critical, whether you're talking about an investigative, I can't get my words out, investigative clinical trial, or if you're talking about a real world observational study. How you conceptualize the problem to be solved must be done, I think, in a critical way. Why am I saying that? Because just, for example, doing something in the lab is not sufficient. or doing something from your comfortable seat in your office or around a group of friends and writing it on the back end of a napkin. That may be a start to something, but it is not really the end all, and it shouldn't be. So how you engage with people begins with where they are on the ground. And what do? We have to be comfortable either having these critical conversations, talking about the concept, doing community or customer discovery, finding out if the problem is even an issue. Right? We assume that problems are issues in communities, but we don't really know unless you get into those communities and have those ways in which you can talk and have a system in place to make sure that knowledge is in. Many times we say, okay, listen, I've talked to 3 or 4 advocacy groups. My last study had 15% African Americans in it. I'm good. And I say, no, you're not, because the problems keep evolving. And even though there's a solution on the one end, it's just like a balloon. When you press one end, something else comes out on the other. So there should be a constant process in place, not only to make sure that you are engaging, but how you can understand the issues and then effectively address knowledge or address solutions that are inclusive, especially for populations that suffer the most. I can't stress this enough. One of the things that I always do as I then think about the customer discovery process is I then develop the hypothesis. So based on what you're saying, this is what I think is the fact of what you're saying, and then have them validate that. And in that way, you then begin to create a dialogue. You begin to understand, the use. You begin to say that the community and people who are in it are foundational. That's for a drug, a device, or a service. So I will stop there because I can keep going, and I don't want to because this is a panel, everybody. I'll hand it back to you, Doc. Where should we go from here?
Thanks, Melba. Your comments are spot on and welcome. At this point, I think we just should shift. One of the things that we wanted to do was bring to the table what is a hot topic that is having direct implications and impact and our questions around the clinical trial environment. And so I'm going to turn it back to Martha and ask her to first give us what is the hot topic for her related to the operational side and at the site level. Martha?
All right. My hot topic is decentralized trials from a perspective of a traditional research site. So that's important. So I'm going to say it again, decentralized trials from the perspective of a traditional research site. All right. So the pandemic didn't just disrupt clinical trials. It permanently rewired them. What started as emergency workaround became a proof of concept. And I know Dr. Covington would love that. Sponsors and regulators discovered trials could run outside of the 4 walls of a clinical research site. And guess what, y'all? There's no going back. And from a traditional site, we understand that. The FDA made it official in September of 2024 with final guidance on decentralized elements, and shortly after, the EMA followed. The regulatory foundation now works, but what I want to offer today is something to think about that gets lost in the decentralized enthusiasm, is that a view from the traditional research site. Because we're not bystanders in this shift, we're the ones that have to make it work or catch it when it doesn't. So I was tasked with giving 3 implementations, and I did my job, y'all. So I'm going to talk about the 3, but I'm going to sit in the middle one, and anybody that knows me will understand why I'm going to sit in that one. So data quality is the new battleground. Decentralized trials generate enormous volumes of continuous data. So we have wearables, we have electronic patient-reported outcomes, we have at-home samples, and that's a promise. And the promise is that regulators are still actively trying to count what is trial-grade evidence from these sources. From where I sit, traditionally, this matters acutely. This is because data validation, data integrity plans, endpoints are all under FDA review. These decisions has to be built in from the protocol from day one. So when we talked about at the beginning, at the table, right, these things need to be thought through. And so the technology is ahead of the guidance right now. And when the submission hits turbulence, it's often the sites and the patients that has to absorb the consequences. And that's not kind of what we want. We really don't want our participants and our patients have to absorb our not thinking things through. So implementation number 2, the diversity promise is real, but so is the trap. This is my lane, y'all. So we're gonna sit here for a moment and talk a little bit about it. Traditional trials have well documented diversity problems. That's no surprise to anyone. Historically, just about 5% of eligible patients participate in the clinical research. Women, older adults, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are consistently underrepresented. DCT trials are positioned as a fix. And there's genuine evidence to support this potential. So, one decentralized COVID-19 trial enrolled about 31% Hispanic or Latinx participants, compared to about 4.7% in a matched clinical based study. But, here's where I see from the ground. Decentralized trials don't automatically deliver diversity, they relocate the barriers. Digital access gaps have literacy, language, trust. Those don't disappear when you move the trial to someone's living room, especially when that living room doesn't have reliable broadband, or when the consent form is only in English, or when no one from the community has ever been asked to participate in research before. And I want to sit here and call this what it is. It's digital redlining. And it shows up in clinical trials every time we design decentralized study without asking who gets left out. Evidence backs this up. It's purely digital recruitment actually underperforms diversity compared to targeted hybrid approaches, where community embedded sites like mine are part of design and not the afterthought. So if you're not building equity in your consent process, your technology stack and your patient support infrastructure lacks from day one. You don't solve the diversity problem, you just move it somewhere else where it's less visible. That's the argument that I bring to every sponsor in the conversation. And it's why traditional sites aren't just legacy infrastructure. We're necessary equity partners in that DCT model. And then the last point is operational complexity shifts and not shrinks. There is so much data, and it's so much data for the sponsors, so much data for the sites. It's just so much data. And if we don't kind of think through what that looks like, then you'll run into resourcing issues. And I'll put on my leadership monitoring hat and what that looks like. So the smartest DCT designs are hybrid and they know it. Like those are the ones, they're part of the community, they're hybrid and they know it. So DCTs are emerging design standard. We have the tools and guidance that exist, but what's still being built and what traditional sites are uniquely positioned to contribute is the trust, the access, and the equity architecture that makes decentralized trials work for everyone. All right, Dr. Anderson, back to you.
Wow. Thank you, Martha. You have dissected very, very key issues that are related to DCTs. And, one of the things that it makes me think about the fact is that as you are looking at this issue of diversity, it is still a part of the fabric of ensuring that you have a population that is representative of the disease and or indication under study. Are we aligned on that? Right? Okay. All right, great. So these challenges are real and we have to really be able to address them. As I think about my hot topic from a regulatory expectations point of view, there are so many changes going on at the FDA for over the last year and a half, right? And so think about new leadership, think about departure of seasoned FDA leaders. Think about what happens when experienced reviewers are not around the table and are engaged. Think about the reduction in workforce. Think about how AI is being used within the agency to offset some of these changes. All of these things together are, on one hand or another, understood, but at the same time, the total impact is that there is I'll just say a seeking of clarity of paths going forward. So one of the things that is a hot topic from my perspective that has a very important impact on clinical trials. And so again, this is at this point where we're talking about trial and errors, is the agency's recent policy change when there is an FDA shift to one adequate, well-controlled trial plus confirmatory evidence, right? So you can read the New England Journal of Medicine article and get the full view of how the FDA leadership is looking at why this cultural reset is important. And indeed, it does create a new opportunity. At the same time, it seems to be a bit of a shift in what exists as far as the ability to rely on a single trial, which the agency has accepted for some time. But the mindset that is approaches that for those conditions outside of oncology and rare diseases, that those too may also be ready for one trial design. So with that comes again some head scratching because think about it this way: 60% of first in of kind molecules that go into clinical trials have been approved based on a single study, right? So again, one of the questions that was raised earlier was context different, but what is the problem that we're trying to fix, right? And let's be clear about that. So therefore, this new shift then has this opportunity to either create questions or confusion and or an engagement opportunity that sponsors have to get it right if they are so choosing to go down this path. So here are the positive implications. One, faster development timelines, especially in the areas of oncology and rare disease where it already exists. Reduce phase 3 feed and spend potentially up to hundreds of millions of dollars to not having to do that second trial. But what are some of the other considerations? And I won't necessarily call them negative, but at the same time that they are indeed those that are managing risk. So the first part would be that a single study failure, that if that happens, that has uh, and sometimes irreversible consequences for a sponsor to be able to go and do a second trial, right? So there's a lot that goes into that decision. Second, it does require that a clinical trial be designed in an almost near perfect kind of scenario. And that just brings to mind even some of the comments that Martha just made regarding GCTs and basically the amount of data that would be required to do that. It also then begs the question about post-marketing requirements changes. Now, we know that those are associated with accelerated approval and things like that. But in this new environment where one single trial might be acceptable for more larger patient populations and common diseases, that's a different level of questioning and opportunity. So what does this do as far as translating to clinical trials? There's going to be more rigor in dose determination in the earlier stages associated with additional costs. You're going to also have how's the statistical analysis plan going to be developed and evolved in this, particularly in these new therapies and innovations that are important to bring to patients, but yet how we get them there, that mountain is maybe growing. Selection and recruitment of the appropriate patient population. And again, it goes beyond diversity, but it's also then about the biology that may need to be defined in particular patient population. And then how do you ensure that you get that? And then how is it that you're able to understand that? The other is earlier engagement with FDA. Now, I can say this all, until I turn blue in the face after 25 plus years in this work, how important it is to approach the FDA. But this is another level of elevation, the level of planning and considerations that sponsors will have to go through if you are presenting this potential of a robust clinical trial that will serve as a single uh, trial for substantial evidence for a larger common disease and disorder. So that's a challenge. And then these are things that will be opportunities for us to kind of really take a think and look about that as far as the clinical trials. So that's what I think is one of many hot topics from a regulatory expectation that sponsors need to pursue. Uh, Melba, what are you thinking on is your hot topic?
I could not agree with you more, both of you actually. My topic that it kind of combines both of what you all have said. So we've talked about decentralized trials, right? We talk about collection of data. We talk about including that data in applications, therapeutic devices. We have watches that's able to collect information. We're looking at how you then use AI technology to really scale this. So my hot button is this, right? I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that we're finding new innovations, that we're trying to understand how that fits into what the sites are already doing or want to understand how to do better, how we look at how the regulatory bodies are thinking about that, but even more importantly, what's going on in the area. So we think about AI, right? Artificial intelligence. It's not new. It's been around for thousands of years. It's statistics, predictive technologies, if you will. It's just done real fast using machine learning, MLs. So you have these huge ways of collecting information. You have these huge data centers coming to an area near you, by the way, that are collecting these vast amounts of information on you, on us, on what you might buy in the store, and providing ways to either create tokens or put things together in these very large repositories. Now, that's not new. We know that registries have been around for a long time, and we think those things are very important. Absolutely. But my point is that this is blowing up, as both Martha and Cheryl have just mentioned. So I'm not only concerned about the regulation, I'm concerned about the validity and the accuracy of the data using AI algorithms. These algorithms are just really mechanical ways in which, or systematic ways in which you are collecting and processing information. These algorithms are built sometimes without people who either have an expertise or understanding in the room. So I'm very concerned about not only the regulation, the validity, and the accuracy of these algorithms that are used to make critical decisions. This is the point of the matter. The point of the matter is that we're using all of these data, whether it's decentralized or whether it's collected on site, or whether it's a hybrid, or whether it's however we're using for adaptive trial designs, if we're using it for digital twinning, whatever it is that we're using it for, we're using it to make a decision about something, right? And that's where real world data can have a tremendous impact. So we have to make sure that we are developing systems and processes that are inclusive of populations to improve accuracy and the efficiency. We have to have a way to continue to learn more. Computers are learning more, AI algorithms are learning more. So you know what? We have to learn more as well. And so why am I saying that in this way? Because I think that a critical piece of the puzzle that we need to make sure is there, that we solve for, is how do you make sure that all of these different applications that are coming out, again, we're talking about digital twinning. It's in terms of taking either samples or simulating models that will then reflect the accuracy of the real world, and using that to say, okay, well, we don't have to do all the populations. We have a digital twin that do what we need to do. All right, but I'm saying no, it won't, because you still have to have a process in place that will validate the algorithm. So I'm not suggesting, right, that we go out and build these tremendous data centers. I'm not playing in that game. But what I am saying is that we should then have a process in place to test it, to validate it, to deal with errors, to deal with biases. We have to have a way to really safeguard our communities and our populations through pressure testing, corrective action, so that we will have at least some knowledge of what's going on, or a way to really understand this is not accurate. You may need to do this, and we need to do this so that we can minimize and not take patient populations for granted. The other thing in this part that I think is in this procedure or this process that I think is more important, or very important, is the training aspect, right? How are we training people in the community? How are we training sites like Martha's site? How are we training about what it is that's going on, so that the patient voice, the strategies that are built, even from an AI predictive technology perspective, are inclusive? We have to make sure they're accurate and they're aligned or integrated, from the beginning of the process. We don't want to wait until the end right, after everything is done and say, oops, or try to figure out how we can backtrack, that's not going to work. But to be able to say, we have a process in place, we know that we're going to be using decentralized clinical trials, we know we're going to be using AI technologies, we know we're going to be predictive of these things. So how do we make sure that it's there at the beginning and not used as a rescue process at the end? Because we already know that that is not cost effective and is extremely, extremely time consuming. So I just think that those things are very important as we then think about the different shifts in the industry and how we can all play a part, if you will, in creating a solution.
I'm hopping out of my seat. I'm hopping out of my seat. Because you said something that's so important. You said that algorithms are only as good as the populations that inform them, right? So when we're making these decisions about adaptive trials, digital twins, real world data, using systems that were built without the communities most affected, we're studying being in the room, right? It goes right back to making sure the right people in the room. I couldn't get off mute fast enough because it's so important having these conversations when you're designing these things. Making sure the right people are in the right space.
Wow, I agree. When you think about the one thing that you would like for our audience to take away, I'm asking you to kind of fill in the blank. I'll start it off, but you fill it in, all right? And so here goes for you, Martha. For the operational sites uh, and how DCT is incorporated, what is your key takeaway that you want the audience to know? And just one key takeaway.
You know, I can't do one key takeaway because you already got on me. So, my key takeaway would be embrace the change and be okay. It's the same, but be okay with the change and embrace embrace this because I think it's good for the community.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, to you, Dr. Covington, when it comes to confirmatory evidence, and let's just put it in the bucket of capturing real world data and evidence, what's the key takeaway? One key takeaway for the audience to consider.
I think that there's a lot of innovation. The key takeaway is take a risk on someone that you haven't worked with before. Right. And the reason why I say that, permit me, is that there are a lot of very innovative people, companies, organizations as a result of all the turmoil that we have. You have people who are stepping out and doing things on their own or with groups or in smaller capacities, and they're different. Right. And so let's not get stuck in using the same people that we've always used for 50 years or 15 years. But these smaller companies, these small organizations, these consultants who are thinking about these things and who have been in industry to think about these things really have a lot to contribute. So I would say take a risk in connecting with people who you're not, accustomed to connecting with, and then listen to what they're saying so that you can see where your company may need to go, what you may need to do. So that's it. Take a risk and talk to somebody different.
Nice. So now I point a finger to myself on the development team level and the regulatory expectations and engagement. So the one key takeaway is that the level of data and inquiry and listening with the authority in a mutual way is going to be imperative for building in those features into the clinical development plans. So be sure to take advantage of those times and those opportunities. So, all right. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's go to our audience. We have a little bit of time to get some engagement. Do we have any questions? I thought I saw at least one pop through the chat. Let's see. I think I'm supposed to be able to read this size.
All right. If you can't, let me know. I see some comments that are coming up.
Please go ahead.
Let me go ahead and read one. And thank you, Antoinette. Her comment is that accessible and transparent needs to be combined. We have to have plain language to really meet people where they are. And then the second one, I think, is also applicable to what you said, Martha, and that's hybrid trials were have been running over a decade, even before the COVID pandemic. And we're not going back, but most sites and clinical supply teams are feeling the brunt of it. So let me just throw that out to both of you all in terms of being accessible and transparent, maybe from a regulatory perspective, and then being able to be effective in dealing with the burdens, if you will, of these hybrid trials.
Right. Go ahead, Martha. I think the context is in your space, so we can't hear you.
I'm muted. I'll start off with Antoinette. Yes, accessibility and transparent is so key needed, and not just at the front end, at the back end too, right? So once you finish your study, you finish your trial, bring it back to the community and say, hey, this is what you participated in. Bring it in a plain language summary that people can understand, because then that builds that trust upon, create spaces that you can share and have like, hey, this is what you worked on. This is what your contribution did to the medicine. If it didn't work, tell them too, because I think that's where the accessibility and transparency comes in. And then for the hybrid trials, yes, you are correct. They were done decades before the COVID-19, but also too, the COVID-19, it actually made everyone pay attention. Everybody wasn't doing them. Certain pharmaceutical companies were doing. I worked on what we thought were new things then, but now it's kind of like second nature. But I just want to call out, when something goes from niche to mainstream overnight, that's when operational infrastructure doesn't always keep up. And you're right, sites, I don't know about clinical supply, I trust you, but we are feeling the burden of it. And the other burden of it too is feeling it that, maybe this decentralized trial didn't work. And now you're trying to get back to these traditional sites to help you enroll for what, thought was the decentralized would do. So thank you for these comments. These are really good, and keep them coming.
Absolutely. If I can just tag in on that, I totally agree with you, right? We see a new technology and we see how it might work or it might be efficient, and we just kind of like pile on to that. And that's good. I'm not saying anything about innovation. I'm all for it. But we can't rely on that solely, right? Because someone can get people enrolled faster, it doesn't solve your problem. You still have a problem with engagement. 80% of the trials fail because people drop out of them, right? So again, back to that beginning. How was it designed at the beginning? Here's one for you, Dr. Gil Anderson. It says the FDA. Oh yeah, where is the FDA on with clarity and guidance on diversity action plans? I'm still seeing trials come through 80% white.
Um, I that's a great question around the diversity action plans that were in place and then placed on, if you will, pause. But what also has happened is, as a function of Fedora, is that the legal requirement to understand the diversity profiles for clinical trials still remains. And so it's important just to note that I can't speak to what the actual current position is for most or every therapeutic area or how it's being approached. But I can say that the the efforts have not gone away. And that even if there has been some concern about the approaches that are taken through, and because of the diversity action plans, it still doesn't take away the responsibility from a balanced study of the population that is intended. And so then with that, then I believe still comes the responsibility, and that diversity action plans are helpful. I am aware that there have been some companies, biopharma companies, that have continued to submit them to the agency for review as well as for feedback. Why? Because it's important to understand the patient population for the product that they are developing. So there's no question about that. So I think, again, my overall comment would be that yes, there is levels of resistance that are in place. And at the same time, there's a level of legislative backbone that still gives the opportunity. But at the end of the day, the sponsor still has to see this as an important piece of data and information to be able to bring the best medication forward for the intended population. So I hope that helps.
Actually, she has a follow-up question I think it'd be interesting for all of us to kind of like chime in on, right? And she has here, the FDA rollout of this AI name Elsa was ridiculous. It was making up medical journals and studies. This is why these systems need human governance. I don't know if you want to tackle that as initial one because the FDA was mentioned, sure, but I would love to follow up after that as well. What do you think?
Go ahead
Ahead.
and
Okay.
address that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This is what I think is really important. Okay. And this is why we have to make sure that not only people who are impacted are at the table when you start thinking about AI and its algorithms and its chatbots and all these other things that are emerging all over the place. Can't take them at face value because they look good, right? That's an illusion, if you will. So you have really the function. So you have AI that may take information that it might get from a variety of situations. We have better, they're synthesizing. We're going into industrial revolution 5.0, whatever it is. But here's what I'm saying. If the information is not available, that to be retrieved by these AI technologies, they're making it up. They're hallucinating, right? And I'm not going to call anyone out, any of the functions out by name. But if they don't have the data, then they'll create what the data should be based on some sort of imputation, right? And if that is not validated, you have things that are mentioned, as she says here, they start making up things. They start saying, okay, well, maybe it's this, right? Or maybe it's that. And I'm not saying that it's true or not true. I'm saying that you have to have people in place, communities in place, the people who actually have lived experiences, the people who have the expertise to look at it and say, no, this is not right, right? This looks like orange, but really it's not an orange, it's a grapefruit. Right? It has the shape of an orange. Someone imputed it as an orange, but it has a very different taste and a very different function. So we should treat it differently. And so I think that you're absolutely right. That's why I think that the communities, in that, people, for example, in churches need to be trained to say, look at data in a particular kind of way. They need to be trained to say, this is what's going on. Not just, this is how you can, for example, get big crowds at your function. That's okay. But in addition to that, here's what you need to look at when you find the information, because it might be made up or it might be duplicated from who knows where. Martha, I see you shaking your head. Do you agree? Do you challenge?
I agree with you 100%.
This has been a great topic. And I think one of the things that we have to let our audience know is that this is not our last opportunity to discuss the areas that are needed to be discussed to advance clinical trials, right? So AI is, in my recommendation, would be that be a standalone topic for one of our episodes that comes up. And so I really want to thank everyone for their questions today, because we are at the bottom of our time and we do want to be respectful. I want to thank you so much for joining Trials and Error discussion. This talk is intended to give different points of perspective as well as the opportunity for solutions. And so to close out the discussion today, though, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Covington so that she can give us our closing remarks.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I think I'm off this. So thanks everyone again, as Dr. Cheryl Anderson has just said, and I'm sure that Ms. Dockery confirms. We thank you for joining our first edition of Trial and Error. Our goal today was to bring together professionals from across the healthcare and clinical research ecosystem to have an open and a candid conversation about how clinical trials are designed, executed, and understood. We believe, as you've heard, that when studies are designed effectively at the beginning, they can move forward efficiently, collaboratively, and cost effectiveness. And we believe that will have an impact. So if you are designing a study, if you're leading a research program, if you're building a team infrastructure, if you're navigating a regulatory strategy, we invite you to connect with us and potentially be a part of future episodes of Trial and Error. You can follow us this series here, or you can connect with us through our respective organization. All in all, we appreciate you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at future episodes of Trial and Error. Have a great rest of your day, and be well, everybody. Thank you.